Ollie Pope made a big score, and Ben Stokes at the press conference, I think it was when he was talking to Sky straight after the game, said something that I want to run past you because this is quite interesting. He basically said that there was a vendetta against Ollie Pope from the press, right? And then, of course, Stokes forgot that you do two press conferences. For those who don't really understand what happens, is you do one on the ground with the broadcaster, and then you have to go into the media and actually do the proper one, right? So the one with the broadcaster goes out, and in that one, he used the word vendetta. And I think by the time he got to the other one, someone said, "Do you really think the press has a vendetta against Ollie Pope?" He went, "Vendetta's the wrong word, everyone. What I meant was agenda against him." And, which is still sort of the same thing. It's just not quite as violent, right? Like it's still the same thing. And it's really interesting. You know, I'm an outsider in English media in that I don't cover every English game, right? Like I don't do all the tours, and I don't write for any English publication. Well, actually, I write for the Cricketer magazine, but I don't, I'm not an English writer, and I've never been a beat writer for England, but I've also lived in London and covered cricket for a long time. So I cover a lot more English cricket than I do other things. I guess there are times when the English cricket media probably do have an agenda or a vendetta against players. The most famous one would be KP. And I was in the middle of all that. And I was then, I swear, Robbie, I went on, I did an article once where I said KP's probably a bit of a dick, right, in my article. And I got introduced on the BBC, right, as a KP apologist. And I was like, I've just written an article calling him a dick. Like, that's how violent, how vicious everyone else was. That was a time when I really felt an agenda against someone. But generally what happens with English media, and it happens in India and Australia as well, and it happens in some of the smaller countries where you have multiple newspapers. Cricket, especially in Test cricket, the final 11 is final, right? So if you don't play well, you don't play well for 5 days. There's no, oh, he didn't play well, so we brought a sub in, and then we'll bring him back next time. Or maybe next time we won't start him in the game. We'll bring him off the bench and we'll try everything out. So you end up for 5 days talking about this person. And then it might be 4-match series or a 3-match series. So if someone's in bad form, the media naturally talks more negative about the person who's on their way out. And Lawrence Booth, who's the editor of Wisdom, once said to me, if you look at most cricket media, it's actually just people being fixated on who's going to get dropped next. And he was sort of saying that they don't talk about the game enough. And I was sort of saying, I agree, but I also think it comes from this weird thing where this player, someone like Sam Cook in his last test match, doesn't bowl particularly well. You then have 2 days of him not bowling particularly well, right? There's no way that the English media has a vendetta or an agenda against Ollie Pope, because Ollie Pope's just not that kind of guy. Like there's no reason that he's gone that way. But on your side, I'm going to die here. On your side of things, right? Players do feel that, right? And they feel it very, very, passionately that the media or whatever have a go at them. And they don't, it's not until they quite often retire that they start to see how media works. And they understand the mechanics of it. And they start to go, oh, he didn't have an agenda against that guy. He just wasn't making as many runs as he should have. And so they were questioning his place. But because of the structure of cricket media, they kept doing the same thing over and over again. And don't get me wrong, cricket media should be better, right? But you would have felt that quite a bit at times, that it was this overall like vendetta or agenda against you or against other players, right? And there are occasions when that's true. And we both know that there are occasions when that's true. But more often, that's not the issue, is it? It's just that the person isn't making runs, and then the pressure sort of folds in on them.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I think I can tell you from experience that there was a lot of times that I thought some commentators had an agenda against me or didn't like me and said stuff, right? For me, they were like, and it's after I become a broadcaster, I realized, hey, they're just doing their job, right? And at that point in time, I probably was, could have been doing better than I was doing at that point in time. And they probably are being critical from a constructive point of view more than a destructive or a negative point of view, right? But it's just that you're so close to your own performances and everything else that's going on at that point in time, that you're not able to perceive things from that point of view. There were a lot of people that I really misunderstood before I became a broadcaster myself. And one of the things I think I learned along the way, as I've been broadcasting for 6 years, and I've learned along the way right now is that, hey, okay, what kind of a broadcaster do you want to be? There are different types of broadcasters. And so, what kind of a journalist do you want to be? Do you want to be a journalist who's analytical? Do you want to be a broadcaster whose constructive criticism is what they want their thing to be? Um, and there are some broadcasters who say that I want to be the bad guy, because in this whole scheme of things, I want to be the bad guy, right? I don't mind the negative press, but I want to be the bad
Michael
guy.
Vaughan says hi.
So there are people who choose the narratives, right? And you can choose a narrative that suits your personality, that suits just the way you are. And some people just say, I just want to be entertaining, right? I want to be entertaining to the people watching cricket on a not a very deep level, right? And then there could be guys who say, no, I want to be really analytical, and I want to be appeal to the aficionados who are watching the game,
Yeah.
and talk about the technical aspects of the game, or the mindset behind the game, or the human side behind the game. There are different approaches, and you pick your narrative. And sometimes, as a cricketer, you're not necessarily observing these aspects, right? And then the minute you observe these aspects, then you get a decent perspective of, okay, this is probably his narrative. This is probably the narrative he's following. So maybe based on that, this is what he's saying about my game. And maybe it's not an agenda against me, or it's not that he doesn't like me. It's just that this is how they're going about their work, and I'm going about my work, and this is how they're talking about my work. And that's all it is. That's all there is to it. And I think if you're gonna do a good job at what you're doing there, and if your job is to basically look and observe and watch athletes at work, and talk about and have an opinion about their technique, or just the way they go about their stuff, or how entertaining it is, there are going to be times when you're going to be critical about what someone does, right? And that comes, you got to take that in your stride. And I think as a cricketer, you take that. I remember, I think Akash Chopra, it was in my last game for KKR, where I was really struggling. On air, he said, maybe he should retire, instead of, when retiring in T20 cricket wasn't the thing, because he's really struggling. He's not getting a ball off the middle of the bat. Maybe he should just retire, and give KKR a chance, perhaps. And I took so much offense to that. But when I had enough distance from it, is when I thought, hey, shit, maybe he was right at that point in time. Maybe he was not being critical, but he was actually suggesting something that he probably felt, when he was probably playing cricket or T20 cricket, where he probably had a day where he really struggled, and maybe he didn't see a solution like I didn't that match. And then he probably in hindsight felt, maybe just walking back and retiring myself out was the best option. And maybe that's it. Maybe what he said that day came from that place rather than, a negative place. And that, often happens when you get distance from the game, distance from even that particular situation.
Did you ever see much of Bob Willis, the TV broadcaster? Like, obviously,
Personality?
Bob Willis, the
No.
cricketer.
Yeah, a little bit, but not much as a broadcaster. I, in fact, watched him bowl a lot more than watched him speak.
He's great to watch bowl. Also, he always used to put.
I watch a lot of classics.
He used to stand so hard on the grass. There were always footprints where he get right into bowl. I never understood how he had bigger footprints than anyone else. But Bob Willis basically decided to be the fun commentator, right? Like late night commentator, and he would just say outlandish things over and over again. And a friend of mine who retired from cricket hated Bob Willis because the English cricketers would watch all day. Sky's really analytical during their broadcast, right? And then Bob Willis would come on the late night show and just go, Charles, they're all rubbish, Charles. Come on, Charles, let's get rid of it. Every time, he would just slag them all off. And it was hilarious, of course. Like, there were English fans who would have, like, T-shirts, with him saying, like, some of these things. And so this player retired, and he gets a job working with Bob Willis. And he's like, I'm going to tell Bob Willis, I'm going to embarrass him on air, right? Like, he's got this, he's so, like, in his own head. And he gets up, and Bob Willis goes, it's all make-believe. This is just, we just have to be as fun as possible for the fans. Right. And that's how he shook his hand. And this guy just went, oh my God, why did I not know that for like a decade? Like if I just known that it was nonsense. And people had tried to tell this guy, look, we know Bob. Yeah. He's the nice. If you meet Bob, you're going to love him. But he's decided that this is how he's going to be on air. And it was fun. And he was hilarious to watch him because it really was. He was so brilliant what he did. But you can imagine if you're a player and you don't know that, right? And it's the same thing of... Yeah. You think about what Ben Stokes is talking about. the English media is that, what is there, 8, 9 newspapers in England? You throw in Cricinfo. I don't think CricBuzz have a reporter anymore. Then you've got maybe a couple of magazine people. You've got this room of 15 people who are all asking the same sorts of things of, do you think Ollie's going to play in the next test match? You can understand where Ben Stokes is coming from, but they've got to fill their copy, right?
Yeah.
They have to actually
It's
follow
also
the
their
news.
job, right? It puts food on the table for them.
And if you don't follow it, which I haven't, right? But if you don't follow it, your editor's going to call you up and go, why are we not talking about Ollie Pope when the Guardian, the Independent, and the Times have all said that Ollie Pope is about to be dropped? So it once you understand the mechanisms, how these things work, it does change. I still think that cricket writing can be better and cricket media can be better, right? And that there are other things that can happen. But
all media can be better.
Yeah, most media can be better. There's no doubt about that. But I just thought it was a really interesting thing that I wanted to get your perspective. So that was quite cool.